The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, and across the moat from Oakland. That's how Alameda thinks of itself, as they're boxed off in this little community. But things are changing. We've had some changes going on in the last few years, so the good will out. As you know, I speak to some of the most interesting people in the world on all different subjects, and for one reason or another, my good friend Howie Gordon has become a regular on Comfortably Zoned. Why is that? Because he is as interesting a person as I've met, as good-hearted along with it, with some great stories about the past and some dreams of the future. And I like to talk to people who not only can look back, but have a habit of living in the present moment so they can enjoy life, and also planning for the future so they can remain happy and contented. So I give you either Richard Pacheco or Howie Gordon, whichever one. It was Richard Pacheco, am I correct, Howie?
That's right.
All right. So
right. I was.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go ahead. I was going to ask you. Sometimes when you wake up, do you feel like Richard, and sometimes do you feel like Howie?
Well, Richard was always just a guard against intrusion on the family by the public. In other words, it was a name used in my career as an adult film actor to give me some protection against the crazies, whether the crazies be pro or con. I learned over time sometimes my fans were bigger pains in the ass than my enemies. But in any case, it was a name just used for the public so that I didn't have people showing up in my door expecting to fuck me at 2 o'clock in the morning on drugs, which are assumptions that are made about people who worked in X-rated films. In fact, today, before our call, I have been busily preparing my house, which is like kind of, I dabble in the arts quite a bit as a creative person, and there's a lot of artistic crap all over the walls and flat surfaces that has to deal with sex. And my grandchildren are arriving later today for a stay this weekend, so I've been going through the stuff that's out there that I think is inappropriate for a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old that would cause some confusion. For instance, I have a transgender Bart figure that hangs from the ceiling. Now, this is the head of Bart with the body of Barbie Benton and actual pubic hair and breasts. So life is confusing enough for a 5-year-old trying to figure out what's right without seeing a boy with breasts and pubic hair of a woman.
Well,
I also have a type.
You have some good taste, because Ms. Benton in her day was quite hot.
There's also a typewriter keyboard, out of which is springing about an 8-inch male erection, and the concept is sex writer.
Right.
And that's hanging also, but I've been taking these things down because these are overt eye grabbers for a little kid, and they don't help at that age.
No.
It reminds me back when, I once removed all of these things from my aura, my art, for my own children. And now I'm going through it with the grandchildren. So leaving out what's appropriate and trying to sort through and figure that out is a theme that runs through life,
Sure.
my life at any rate.
Sure.
A lot of people And this is what else. Oh, no, I tied myself up in knots. Hold on 1 second while I untie myself from the phone cord.
Okay. Boy, I haven't had a phone cord in so long. Everything is.
There we go. It's the mundane things of life that cause me problems. The complex things are very easy. But being choked to death by the phone cord is a clear and present danger.
Well, at least they can have a definitive answer as to how you died that way.
He was trying to he was masturbating and choking himself, and he died in the phone cord. So once upon a time, I got a letter from a fan. And in this letter, my fan was wanting to know about the sex education of my children, me being, at the time, an active porn star. And a lot of assumptions are made about people in the porn industry, that they are sexual libertines, that they have no common sense, that they are doomed to a life drug addicted and stoned and absent of all common sense. So I wrote my fan this letter. Let's address some of your concerns and replace some of the myth conceptions with some facts. Number one, that there is a big difference between me as a husband and father of 3, family guy, hardworking man, and Richard Pacheco, my persona as a veteran actor of adult films and personal cheerleader of all things sexual, etc. The fact of the matter is that there is less of a dichotomy than you'd imagine. In the first place, Richard Pacheco doesn't exactly qualify as a personal cheerleader of all things sexual. Let me give you an example. In the days before the kids were even born, I did a sex scene with a very well-known adult film actress of the day. The scene called for some light bondage, spanking, and other SM activity. At the time, it was all very new to me and very exciting. When our scene was finished, this actress, sensing my interest, invited me to her apartment to continue this new adventure into kink. I eagerly accompanied her home. When we got there, I was most impressed to see a bullwhip hanging on the wall over her large bed. I was also shocked to see a 4-year-old running around loose, playing unattended in the apartment. The actress seemed to fully expect us to continue our sexual romp with the kid bopping in and out of the room, as kids are wont to do. Something in me simply said this was all wrong. I didn't make an issue of it with the actress, but I also didn't engage her sexually in any way. It just wasn't in me. In time, when I realized that the kid wasn't going to go away, I did. End of story. Sexual freedom carries with it responsibility. Right and wrong certainly varies from person to person and situation to situation, but we all must come to terms with the discoveries of who we are and the aspirations of who we want to be. There are any number of sexual activities that I do not indulge in personally, and any number of other sexual activities that I do practice that I would refrain from doing if the situation did not feel right. My actions as a private citizen versus those as my porn star Richard Pacheco persona will definitely vary, depending upon if my wife or children are around at any given moment. My sexual availability is radically altered by the presence of either or both. When the wife is next to me, I am hers. This deference protects our union, which is more dear to me than the momentary shenanigans of lust, or what used to be the demands of pornographic work. When I was working as an actor, my last sex scene was probably 1987 or 88. I did not want my wife to be present on the set. It was too emotionally distracting. Sexual functioning was difficult enough for me on camera. I did not need to load up the performance experience further with a blockbuster of potential personal and emotional primary relationship trauma. Similarly, when I'm out with all of my kids in the world, the horns of my personal desire are withdrawn. In the name of the family and out of respect for their mother, I would never put on a show of my desire for another woman. Confusion, fear, and anger would most likely be the net result for my children. and I've learned that that would be stupid and unacceptable to put them through that. Many years ago, when I was newly moved to a Berkeley commune called Dragon's Eye at the end of the 60s, my own parents were afraid that I had moved in with the Manson family. They came west from Pennsylvania to check me out. At the time, I was being Rolfed, polarity therapied, mastered, and Johnsoned, and surfing just about every wave of spiritual and psychological innovation and regurgitation that passed through Berkeley during those turbulent times. At one point, my dad and I were alone, and I confronted him with my desire for us to be closer friends. I wanted to know more about his life, his secrets. I wanted to share more of mine with him. I wanted us to be friends. Well, long story short, he started telling me all about a hooker that he had been seeing on the side. I was like 23 years old at the time. Whoops, that was a big mistake. Far from being able to be his friend, internally I instantly became my mother and was filled with this jealous anger and resentment at the revelation of this knowledge. The truth was that it was not information that I could handle at all well. Rather than get off the elevator and explore any more of that level of chaos, I remember confessing, you know what, Dad? I think I was wrong. I can't really handle this at all. How about you just be my dad and I'll be your son and we'll go on loving each other like before. It was a most instructive moment in my life and gave loud echo to some biblical phrase I had once chanced upon that counseled, "Thou shalt not gaze upon thy father's nakedness." I finally had an inkling as to what that phrase could mean. Okay, let's move on. You say, I'm really more interested in your take as how you'd like to handle some situations versus how you and your wife have agreed to handle them. It, of course, being a reference to the sexual education of the kids as offered by us being the mom and dad. Again, the conflict that you imagine between the libertine Pacheco and his more traditional wife has never really occurred. We have been in agreement on almost all matters concerning the puberty and sexual education of our kids. I should say that one of the most important foundations follows on a couple's decision as to whether or not they are going to respect the incest taboo. In a world where all notions of right and wrong were up for reevaluation, which is what the 60s and 70s were, it was one decision where we discovered that we were in complete agreement, rejecting the romantic idealism of the French film Murmur of the Heart, wherein the mother initiates her son into the matters of love. We both had seen too much of the damage done when adults have crossed that boundary line and indulged themselves sexually with children. Appropriate instruction, yes, but hands-on demonstration is a lifetime ticket to therapy for the kid, or worse, often much worse. I don't think such things work out well, even in utopia. That said, I have never sought to appear as Richard Pacheco's sex star to my kids. Sharing materials of mine designed to arouse and titillate just always seemed inappropriate. Besides that, Michael Jordan's kids don't want his autograph. They want Shaquille O'Neal's or Allen Iverson's. Michael Jordan is just dad, the one who tells them to clean their room and to go to bed. And the truth is that this has never been a particularly nettlesome issue at all. Of far greater concern has been the children's own unfolding sexuality. Our job as parents has been to teach them of the beauty of the rose of human sexuality and alert them to the dangers of the thorns. You were less specific in your questions here, but I will simply tell you that my eldest, 17 in May, with a 21-year-old boyfriend, became sexually active when she was 14. Before this event occurred, she came to her mother for advice. We simply realized that this activity was going to happen with or without our approval. So we sought to manage it in the ways we believed would be the most beneficial for all concerned. We arranged for her to see a gynecologist who instructed her in the ways of birth control, proper hygiene, and the dangers of today's sexually transmitted diseases. Next, we sat down with the young couple and told them of our rules for engagement. We made our house available to save them the chaos of the back seat, the back alley, or hidden basement. We insisted on condoms. We insisted on a monogamous agreement between them as protection from the multiple partner exposure to AIDS. And thank the Lord and her cousin, it has all worked out pretty well. Likewise, her younger sister became sexually active around the same age. A repeat performance this time with her and her 1-year older boyfriend took place. They have been flourishing for over a year now. It is weird to occasionally hear the moans of passion emanating from behind the closed doors of one of your children's rooms. Clearly nothing like that ever happened in my childhood, or that of my wife's. But we are living our lives the best way we know how, and struggling to share the very best of what we have learned with our own offspring. The youngest is my son. He's barely ready for masturbation, let alone lovers. Boys are different than girls, and even within that, we all mature at our own pace. The best a parent can do in this regard is not to mess with Mother Nature, but to remain on call as the plant evolves. In regards to these matters I've discussed and the juxtaposition you've posed as to what I did in the real world versus what I would call the ideal world, I honestly believe that my wife and I are succeeding in making that ideal world real when it comes to the sexual parenting of our kids. The real world, as you put it, does intrude from time to time and must be accommodated. For example, this last weekend, middle daughter came downstairs to go out for the evening wearing a skirt that made a miniskirt look conservative. I asked if she was trying to get work as a hooker and offered that she was going to attract a lot of gross male heat because she was wearing a skirt that screamed, "Fuck me." You fill in the blanks. This is a family magazine. I only put F in the article. Her mother's approach was more practical, with questions like, where was she going and who was she going with? In time, my daughter reached her own conclusion that perhaps she might be asking for more trouble than she wanted by wearing such a skirt, and changed to more suitable clothes. You take these things one step at a time. As to whether or not I'd support and approve my children entering the world of performing in pornography, AIDS offers a strong vote of no. Beyond that, let me suggest that other than money, which is driven to such exhibitionist and outlaws or rebellious behavior by factors of repression and other elements of one's personal family dynamics in growing up. That doesn't make sense. Beyond that, let me suggest that, other than money, one is driven to such exhibitionist and outlawish or rebellious behavior, meaning performing in porn, by other elements of growing up. My point is that when sex is accepted and celebrated for the goodie that it is and can be in this life, it takes on a much less obsessive place in one's life than when it is denied, vilified, or repressed. You can quote me on that. I know I have. Many elements that I have seen in my own life and the lives of the colleagues in the world of X are missing, mercifully, from the lives of my own children. Whether or not they would choose to walk the path of sexual performing, I can't say for sure, but I would think not. If they did choose to experiment with it, we would certainly have to have a talk. A lot of doors close when one enters the world of public sexuality. Al Goldstein, notorious editor and publisher of Screw magazine, once commented that being a porn star is a lifetime sentence. In many ways, I found that to be true. But that's another story for another time. A cure or a vaccine against AIDS will no doubt turn the sexual world and all its mores upside down once again, and we will all have to adjust. But I actually look forward to that and will be among those celebrating when that day comes. AIDS has been a nightmare and a plague upon the world. As my late mother would have put it, enough already, enough already. So I hope this adequately addresses your concerns and offers you and your spouse some food for thought in raising your own kids. That said, I shall now return to worrying about the new roof and how am I going to get the money to pay for it. And it's signed Howie Gordon, a.k.a. the ghost of Richard Pacheco.
That's a good way of putting it, the ghost of Richard Pacheco. Love it. Love it, Howie. Very well said. May I say that, may I throw in how I was brought up around sex? All that I remember is that no issue was ever made. No guilt trip was thrown. Nothing was said or not said that made me think that sex wasn't okay. And not much was explained. A lot of it was with me was just doing what came naturally. But I agree with what you say. The more issue you make of it, the more kids are apt to rebel or go the other way, whatever you believe. But I wanted to ask you this question. How does Trump's desire, Trump, Pence, Sessions, whoever they are in the White House in power, their desire to set us back to the dark ages by doing things like closing down Planned Parenthood, etc. Where does that come from after all these years of since the 60s of open sexuality? Where are they coming from, and who are they impressing? And is it a little scary? Are they going to take us back?
Well, my first response is that let's start from the top down. Donald Trump. Those ideas have nothing to do with Trump's reality whatsoever. He doesn't live that way and never has. He is a pig, and he goes about getting all the pussy he can get.
Right.
And he has no remorse about any of that as far as I can tell. The truth of the matter for him, it's all a matter of political expediency. He is backing those choices because that gives him a large power base with which to keep him in power. And he just gives lip service to them, and they know that, and he knows that, and that's what's going on there. People who actually spout those kind of values are very often steeped in hypocrisy, because on the one hand, America wants cardboard leaders that talk about Jesus and say all the right things according to Sunday morning sermons, and then don't live that life privately. And they keep the news of what they actually are doing out of the papers. But every now and then we get a Tammy Faye Baker story, if you remember her, spilling out, or some other guy who's the head of some other guy who's doing his best.
Caught in an airport restroom.
Yeah, who is one of the leaders in Congress of attacking homosexual behaviors, yet privately he is gay. And lives with a certain amount of self-hatred because he can't reveal that, because then he'll have no political career. So our
goes back to the McCarthy era with Cohen and all the crazy.
This is one of the public moralities that the Europeans have always been way ahead of us with. Their acceptance of sexuality rather than the puritanical strain that has taken hold in America, which mostly, as I said, is a hypocritical stance. But let's say I once wrote this piece, which is not, I wish I had it at my fingertips, but I don't. But it was a satire on the fact that if you really want to make sex red hot, forbid it. Because then when your dick is hard and you can't say no, you're burning. You are fucking burning. And you go ahead and you have this burning hot sexual experience, and you're the sinner. It's Elmer Gantry. It's Scarlet Letter. It's been repeated all throughout history. It's a way to make the sex really hot, but it also makes you crazy. And that's the problem with it, because it puts you at odds with your own human nature, where your sex only, in the Puritan vein, you have a channel for it. It's got to be with your wife, with the lights on, in the covers, in a certain position, and you're going to make a baby. And anything else is sinning, and you're going to hell.
And if you're an Orthodox Jew, it's between a sheet.
Well, the Jews have been more, I guess you could, but then they end up having 110 kids, those people. So they're fucking a lot anyway. Lord knows what they're thinking while they're fucking, but it goes on.
Boy, the sheet is sexy. You're wearing a lovely sheet tonight, my darling.
We've just really had a hard time incorporating our animal instincts into our moralities of humanity, and that's the biggest. The emperor has no clothes that we've grown up.
And I'm not saying which church, but probably the mother church more guilty than others of screwing it all up. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's some interesting things historically to speak of. My former tennis partner, who's a rabbi, once told me that in biblical days there was a holiday at the end of the harvest when all the work was done and food was in for the winter. That night, they would have a festival where all the marriage rules were suspended for the night. And people would go out into the fields that they had just harvested, and anybody could fuck anybody they wanted to. And in the morning, when the sun came up, they went back to their lives. This was a Jewish holiday. And that last, I don't know how many hundreds of years.
Is that Sukkot?
It's more like Tuchus than Sukkot.
All right.
But that certainly found its way out of Judaism at some point, and they don't celebrate it anymore. But that used to be on the books, and it's there in history.
Oh,
I was so shocked to learn of it. I want to bring it back. I think it's a great idea. Because these days, if you want to covet your neighbor's wife, let's put it that way, it could cost you your family.
How about Wednesdays?
Yeah, sounds good to me. It's a pretty good idea. Brighten up the middle of the week.
Then it's settled. Make up some calls, put it in action.
You've just multiplied the holiday by 52. It used to be one day a year. You're making it 52 days a year.
Hey, look, who's in
But I vote for you. I think you should win.
Thank you. It's my network, for Christ's sake.
Okay, you win. You're Hitler.
Win.
I want to say one more thing about Trump. It's on my mind because I just got it this morning. I was looking at it was in the Huffington Post. Trump has called the Democratic Party Nazis.
And I read that.
If it hasn't become apparent to the entire world by now, Donald Trump makes a tactical habit of accusing whoever he's opposing of doing the very thing he's doing before they accuse him of it. So his Nazification of America is if he's not doing it. The opponent is really doing that. He's beginning to take the sting out of it by accusing them of it before it gets put against him. But it's a tactic that he does repeatedly with whoever he's in opposition.
The stealth bomber is actually invisible.
Yeah, well, that's just stupid. That's like 17 years that Obamacare has been fucking up the country. Another just stupid lie. I mean, just not even a lie, just stupid.
Horrible. You're forcing all these people to get insurance that they couldn't get because of pre-existing conditions, and now others are paying the bills, and they don't have to go bankrupt. How fucked is that, man?
Well, the most fucked thing of all, and the most dangerous thing of all that we're living through, is the fight over the truth. What he's really been very successful at with a large number of people in his base are getting them to vilify everybody that disagrees with him. And that's ugly and horrible and dangerous. That's where we lose certainty because we no longer can agree on what the facts are.
Yeah.
He tells people, ignore what you see. It's not what's real. And it keeps everybody debating their own truth with themselves. And there's no conversation anymore based on any kind of agreed facts. It's just everything you're saying is a lie. And no, everything you're saying is a lie. So that's where we're at with him at this point in time. The press has been deemed an enemy of the people. This is just, he should be impeached for that all by itself. Just the destruction of the freedom of the press.
Absolutely. That's a constitutional right, and covering that up. What he did in that press conference, denying that woman access, she was the pool reporter, and she asked the question that offended the great man. And he turns around and has her denied access to a press conference that was going on the grounds or whatever. Suppression of what the press is all about is we can't stand for that. That's the first.
Well, it's on the path to gathering all those people up who disagree and putting them into re-education camps until they come out spouting the word, the popular whatever they decide the popular is. That's where that goes, and that's or they end up dead. This is Hitler and Mussolini in the training bra that we're dealing with, and we got to get them out.
Yep. And the best way to do that is to get out the vote in.
I hope. I'm cynical enough where I don't even know if I trust votes anymore. Aside from the fact, I guess they must be real. They wouldn't be working so hard to subvert them. You know what I'm saying? Because if they just a matter of numbers, it's just so run who you want, and we'll and then when it's all the election's over, we'll tell you what the numbers are. And who's going to argue that?
For me was Deborah Wasserman Schultz and how she really, in essence, fixed the primary, and Bernie didn't win, and he had no baggage, and he would have killed this putz in any election under any circumstances, and it was fixed. And I felt personally ripped off. I just scoured that ballot when it came in, the primary ballot. I was so happy.
Well, it was the biggest mistake that the Democratic Party's made in recent years. I mean, just that they were the ones to pull the ugliness. And she made a bad call. And
I have a friend named Scott, and Scott says it's simply a matter of stopping the line and changing the labels every 4 years. That both, it's the same medicine. They play good cop, bad cop with us, and they're all taking money from the NRA, and that's the common denominator. So sometimes I have no hope, but that's counterproductive. That makes you sad. Got to look to the future, and what I'm excited about is young people are taking a more active role in running for office. There's a bunch of young people, running for Congress on platforms that I respect, and they seem to be getting favorable backing. So, got to hope for the best.
I agree. I think that worries me some when we're reduced to that is that the youth have a way of true believing to the point where they shoot themselves and they shoot us, everybody, in the foot. And what I mean by that is when you get the Bernie people so angry at the Debbie blah blah and Hillary blah blah that you make the Democratic Party a civil war and you split the vote, and a creep like Trump gets in because if we all had one same candidate, I don't care which one it would be, but if we all had the same one, we would have won that election. So at some level, the Democrats from Ralph Nader were doing it, keep repeating this phenomenon. And you'd think we would learn that in the end, fight it out, pick your candidate, and then you got to just, even to the people who thought Bernie's is there or Hillary is there, it doesn't matter because either one of them wouldn't have been as noxious as what we're experiencing. And it's not even close. So that's the fear I have with progressives because there's no room for compromise here, and that's wrong because real life is filled with compromise everywhere you go, and you got to deal with the situation and make the best choice you can make. And when you draw that line in the sand,
I'm losing faith in compromising because does one really want to compromise with a Trumpite? In other words,
No, but that's, the question is how do we defeat him? I'm just thinking with very specific issues here, Democrats versus Republicans. When we make the Civil War against when the Democrats descended, they're shooting themselves in the foot. My argument, and that's unacceptable. We've got to mature beyond that and then fight it out amongst ourselves once we have the office. But to give away the office in that battle and feel justified is stupid. Yeah, just my little opinion there.
Good opinions and a good show. Thank you, Howie. I enjoy your company, and hopefully I'd like to turn this into your own podcast where you get your word. I'll still be here, but
Well, I don't know down the road. Not on the air, but this is a place to discuss some things, and we'll eventually get to them. But right now, I really like that I'm on your show and that we do this because it's, number one, for each other. And then number two, people want to listen in on it. That's great. And where it all goes, I have a huge harvest of materials coming in my life before I die. And that's what I'm beginning to get organized and work on now. And the delivery systems will be everything from audio books to podcasting possibly, or this or that. I don't know. One step at a time.
Well, let's just keep it fun.
Yeah.
If it ain't fun, it
It's
should
a good idea. It's a good idea. I'm all for that.
All right. We have a good meeting of the minds, my friend.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it next week. And
well, I'll be busy on Wednesday if I recover, because Wednesday night I'm gonna tell my wife the new law has been passed, and she can go.
And if she has any questions, just say, talk to Zig. Okay.
Yeah. Use a condom. Use a condom. I don't want you bringing home any fresh diseases.
All right. Talk soon, Howie. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for listening, everybody. We'll be back before you know it. Adios.
Adios.